My name is Violet Harper. I was once considered one of London's most promising floral designers. My work had been featured in the wedding section of the Metropolitan Daily. I had designed table arrangements for British royal garden parties and won 2 silver medals at the Chelsea Flower Show. I thought my life would keep going that way, making the flowers I loved, seeing the people I loved, and living the life I loved. But I never imagined that the person I trusted most would turn everything I loved into his own achievement. He was Julian Flint, my college boyfriend, and the man I founded Flint Floral with after graduation. The name was his, the ideas were mine. That was the unspoken understanding between us. He smiled under the lights at the front desk, shook hands, and signed contracts. I stayed at the workbench in the back, developing concepts, selecting flowers, and making arrangements. Over 10 years, Flint Floral grew from a small corner shop into a well-known brand with 3 branches. Whenever the media interviewed him, Julian would look into the camera and say, "I am the soul of this brand." He wasn't lying. He simply left something unsaid. The soul was mine. He was only the shell smiling into the camera. I thought that was simply how we divided the work. He stayed outside, I stayed inside. Then, one spring, I accidentally overheard him on the phone with a client.
Violet's designs? No, she's just executing them. The ideas are all mine.
I stood in the doorway of the studio, holding a freshly trimmed bouquet of peonies. There were droplets of water on the petals, glittering in the light. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront him. I simply turned around and closed the door behind me. That night, I went through years of contracts, invoices, and media coverage. Every award nomination had Julian's name on it. Every interview was with Julian. Every design proposal was signed by Julian. My name had appeared only once in an internal floral industry newsletter as senior florist at Flint Floral. Not designer, senior florist. They wouldn't even allow the word design into my title. I thought about leaving, packing my bags, moving to a new city, and starting over. But every time I opened the closet and saw the design sketches I had accumulated over the years, I couldn't do it. There were thick stacks of them, hundreds of pages. Each one carried a date, a signature, and a fingerprint. The edges were stained with coffee. There were pencil marks from all the times I had revised them, and pressed flower samples attached to the corners. Those sketches were years of my life. If I walked away, they would remain in Julian's office, waiting for another florist to open them, copy them, and continue calling them Flint's designs. I couldn't let that happen, so I stayed and made a decision. Not to argue, not to make a scene, to collect. I would find every piece of evidence of what had been stolen, one by one. Julian was smart, but he had one weakness. He never thought he needed to guard against me. I was the woman standing in the back room, bringing him coffee, booking his flights, and hugging him after every press event, telling him, "You're the best." I had been that woman for years, so he had every reason to believe I would always remain that way. What he didn't know was that, from very early on, I had left a mark on every design sketch that only I could use to prove its authenticity. It wasn't a signature. It was a date and a fingerprint. The fingerprints were pressed with a special ink that would appear under ultraviolet light, and that UV lamp had been sitting in the deepest drawer of my desk, unopened for years. It wasn't because I had suspected him all along. Before I became a floral designer, I had studied authentication. Our teacher told us,
"A creator's fingerprint is the best signature."
At the time, I thought he was being paranoid. Now I understood. He wasn't paranoid. He had been deceived. That spring, an invitation to the World Floral Masters competition arrived at Flint Floral. It was the highest honor in the floral world, held once every 4 years, and every contestant had to submit a collection of original work. Julian exceedingly placed the invitation on his desk and said to me,
"This time, I'm going to Wick's Sward."
As I looked at the invitation, an idea suddenly came to me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was something colder and calmer than both. A plan. I asked him, "What are you planning to submit?" He said,
I haven't decided yet. Do you have any suggestions?
I said, "I want to create an installation piece. Not with flowers, but with a new material." He frowned slightly.
Installation art? Floral competition judges usually prefer tradition.
Trust me, I said. He did. He had trusted me for years because my suggestions had never failed him. What he didn't know was that this time, the suggestion wasn't meant to help him win. It was meant to make him lose. I began preparing my work in secret, not with flowers, but with sketches. There were 347 design sketches from the past years. One by one, I cleaned them up, mounted them, sealed them in protective film, and assembled them into a massive, circular structure, something like a crown, but not the sweet, delicate kind woven from flowers. It was a crown of thorns made from paper pages and ink. Along the edges of every sketch, I checked the fingerprints under ultraviolet light. They were clear. On the back of every sketch, I attached copies verifying the dates and signatures. This wasn't a floral artiquick. It was 347 pages of evidence. Julian was very pleased with my new material. He said,
This is powerful. The judges are going to love it.
He stood in front of my workbench, looking at the mounted sketches with a smile lifting at the corner of his mouth. He had no idea those sketches were evidence of his plagiarism. He simply thought they looked beautiful, because he had never truly looked at them. He only knew the work sold well. He never knew why it was good. That was exactly what I needed. A man who couldn't see the evidence right in front of him. On the competition entry form, Julian filled in his own name under creator. He asked me to write production assistant. I looked at the form and said nothing, because I knew that when the judges saw the crown of thorns, they would see who the real creator was. Not the name on the form, but the fingerprints on every sketch. The night before the work was submitted, I stayed alone in the studio for the final inspection. 347 sketches. I verified every fingerprint under the UV lamp. I photographed and archived every date and signature. Standing in front of the crown, which was taller than I was, I suddenly thought of myself years earlier, fresh out of school, working my first florist job, staying late till dawn, my hands covered in wounds from rose thorns. Back then, I believed the pain was worth it because my hands were creating. Now, my hands were exposing the truth. On the day the work was transported to the competition venue, Julian stood at the warehouse entrance in his tailored suit, giving orders to the transport workers. I stood behind him, holding a cup of coffee. That had been my place for years. As the workers loaded the crown of thorns into the truck, one sketch lifted slightly at the edge. Julian didn't notice, but I did. It was a drawing of a bouquet of white peonies, the first design I ever made for Flint Floral. The date belonged to a spring long ago. My eyes nearly filled with tears, but I held them back. The competition was in Amsterdam. We flew to the Netherlands and checked into a hotel near the venue. In the room, Julian spent the day making phone calls to the media, to clients, to judges, all people he knew. He socialized all day while I organized the project statement. Under creator, it said Julian Flint. Under production assistant, it said Violet Harper. I stared at those two lines for a long time. Then I took out a pen and added a note beside production assistant, actual creator, before crossing it out again. No traces. I told myself, soon, the whole world will know. The night before the competition, Julian went out for dinner and networking. I stayed alone in the hotel room and made a phone call to the World Floral Masters Organizing Committee. I used an anonymous line and left a pre-recorded voice message.
One of the entries tomorrow contains evidence of plagiarism. Please ask the judges to use a UV light during evaluation.
I didn't say which entry, because I knew they would find it on their own. After hanging up, I sat on the bed and looked out at the Amsterdam night. The lights along the canals reflected on the water like shattered gold. Suddenly, thought of the night Julian proposed. He knelt on one knee and said,
Violet, I will make you the happiest woman in the world.
He hadn't been wrong. He had only meant it in the wrong way. On the day of the competition, the Amsterdam Convention Center was packed. Floral designers from more than 30 countries were making their final adjustments at their booths. Julian was wearing a deep blue suit with a white calla lily pinned to his lapel. Everywhere he went, people greeted him.
Mr. Flint, Mr. Flint.
He loved every second of it. I stood beside the crown of thorns, adjusting the arrangement of the sketches. No one came over to greet me. The judges began making their rounds. There were 7 of them, all respected veterans of the floral industry from different countries. When they stopped in front of the crown of thorns, I heard one of them ask,
Is this made of paper?
Julian stepped forward with a smile.
Yes. We're using a new material language to explore the boundaries of floral design.
When he said we, he meant himself. He didn't even gesture toward me. The judges began examining the sketches more closely. One of them put on his glasses and leaned in. He noticed the dates and signatures on the sketches and frowned slightly.
What are these sketches?
He asked.
They were part of the design inspiration. We transformed them into an artistic element.
His voice was steady. What he didn't know was that the judge had just taken a UV light out of his pocket. It wasn't a standard judging tool, but it had been mentioned in the official competition notice. Julian had never seen that notice because he never read emails carefully. I had. The UV light swept across the lower right part of a sketch. A fingerprint appeared, then another, and another. Every fingerprint glowed blue-white beneath the light. The judge's expression changed.
Mr. Flint, whose fingerprints are these?
The judge wasn't speaking loudly, but several reporters nearby had already gathered around. Julian froze. He looked at the fingerprints, then at me. For the first time, he didn't know what to say. I didn't answer for him. I simply stood there and waited. For years, I had always spoken for him. I smoothed things over with clients. I filled in the gaps during interviews. I explained where the creative ideas came from. This time, my only job was silence.
This is my team's work. The fingerprints were probably left during production.
The judge moved the UV light to the dates and signatures.
Every sketch had a date.
The handwriting was mine. I always dated my design drafts using a special ink pen. Under UV light, the ink appeared in different colors. Julian never knew that. He thought it was an ordinary black pen. The judge looked up at me.
Mrs. Harper, are these sketches yours?
I took a deep breath.
Yes. Every design sketch from all these years belongs to me.
The dated signatures are my handwriting. The fingerprints are mine.
Julian Florent has never designed a single one of these pieces. He only signed his name.
The color dread from Julian's face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He couldn't tell them it wasn't true. He had been my partner for years. He knew exactly what he could do and what he couldn't. For a moment, the convention center fell silent. Then a wave of murmurs swept through the crowd and camera flashes lit up the room. Julian raised a hand to shield his face, like a fugitive caught in the spotlight. The judges stepped aside and began discussing the situation among themselves. I stood beside the crown of thorns and watched the sketches shimmer beneath the lights. 347 sketches. Every one of them had been drawn by me at 3 or 4 in the morning. Every one marked a step I had taken on this journey through floral design. They weren't standing there to win a competition anymore. They were standing there to tell the world who they belonged to. Finally, Julian spoke. He didn't look at me. He looked at the judges.
I admit Violet drew those sketches, but the brand is Flint Floral. Clients know my name. What's wrong with me using her work? She's part of the team.
His voice trembled, but his argument sounded practiced. He was trying to dress plagiarism up as teamwork, but the judges weren't clients. They were experts. The chief judge, an elderly Dutch woman with white hair, looked Julian directly in the eye.
Mr. Flint, the rules are very clear. The submitted work must be the original creation of the person entering the competition. If the work isn't yours, then you're in violation of those rules.
She paused before continuing.
And what you've done over the years goes far beyond competition rules. You entered competitions, accepted awards, and gave interviews under your own name using this woman's work. That's not just a rules violation, that's an ethical issue for the entire industry.
Julian said nothing. His mouth opened and closed again like someone struggling to breathe. The committee officially disqualified Julian Flint. Not a penalty, not a warning. A complete disqualification. His competition history was placed under review, and past awards were reopened for investigation. The chief judge turned to the reporters and said,
This is the largest plagiarism case.
As reporters rushed toward Julian, I stepped away from the crowd. I wasn't avoiding the cameras. I wanted to watch the final scene. Members of the ethics committee escorted Julian away for investigation. As he passed me, he stopped.
Violet, why are you doing this?
I looked into his eyes, the same eyes I once believed were deep and sincere. Because you asked a question. What's wrong with using her work? You're still asking that question now. That's why. Then he left. The doors of the convention center closed behind him, shutting out the noise of the crowd. I stood there and suddenly felt exhausted. Not physically. It was the kind of exhaustion that comes after carrying tension for years and finally letting it go. I leaned against a wall and slowly crouched down. A young Dutch florist walked over and handed me a bottle of water.
Your work is beautiful.
I looked up at her and smiled.
Thank you.
For the first time in years, someone had publicly praised my work. That night, I walked alone along the canals of Amsterdam for hours. The April air was still cool, and flower petals drifted across the water. I crossed bridge after bridge, and every time I stopped to look at the reflections, I found myself thinking about the sketches. They had been sealed by the committee as evidence. I didn't know if I would ever get them back. But if losing them meant the truth could finally be seen, then it was worth it. When I returned to the hotel, Julian's luggage was gone. He had checked out early without leaving a message. I sat alone in the empty room and suddenly laughed. What was I laughing at? That after all those years, I had finally learned something important. Never lend your talent to someone who hasn't earned it. The next morning, I flew back to London. Just after the plane landed, my phone buzzed. It was an email from the Industry Ethics Committee informing me that I would be called to a hearing. At the bottom of the email was a short note. Ms. Harper, we can provide legal support if needed. I replied immediately, thank you, but that won't be necessary. I already have all the evidence. My evidence wasn't gathered by lawyers. I created it myself, one sketch at a time. When I got back to London, I didn't return to Flint Floral. Instead, I went to the backroom studio I had worked in for years and packed up the few things I had left behind. A few pairs of floral shears, a bundle of twine, some dried flower samples, and the small UV lamp that had been sitting in the back of my drawer for years. There wasn't much to take. In the end, everything fit into a single box. On my way out, I passed through the reception area. Behind the front desk hung a large photograph of Julian. Underneath it was a plaque that read, Founder. I stood there for a moment, looking at it. Then I left, locked the door, and slipped the key into the mailbox. For the next few weeks, I stayed in a friend's apartment. During the day, I organized documents. At night, I slept. I'm not someone who enjoys looking back, but those days required me to. I needed to sort through the entire timeline, every year, every design, every act of plagiarism, every moment Julian stood in the spotlight without ever mentioning my name. I turned it all into a long written statement. Every accusation had evidence attached to it. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't revenge. It was so calm it felt like writing an annual report. One night, my friend asked me, "Do you hate him?" "I used to," I said, "but hatred is exhausting. I'm learning how not to." "Then how do you feel now?" I thought about it for a moment. "Empty," I said. "A very clean kind of empty." It rained on the day of the hearing, but it was full. I wore a black suit and put on light makeup. I wasn't trying to look good. I wanted to look like someone there to present facts, not a victim, but a witness. The ethics committee's meeting room wasn't large, but it was full. 7 committee members, 3 lawyers, several reporters, Julian and his attorney. Julian wasn't wearing a suit. He had on a dark gray mother and looked far more tired than I remembered. When he saw me walk in, he didn't look up. My statement lasted for hours. I went through the timeline piece by piece. Every project came with photographs of the original sketches, publication records, and contracts signed by Julian. Halfway through, one of the committee members turned to Julia.
Mr. Flint may have made some mistakes regarding attribution, but that does not constitute plagiarism. Ms. Harper was an employee of Flint Floral. Her work belongs to the company.
I looked at Julian. He still wouldn't look at me. So I took out my phone and pressed play.
We're not employer and employee, we're partners. You bring the creative ideas, I'll handle the business. Trust me, the work will always be yours.
It was Julian's voice from the day I joined the company. The audio quality levels wasn't great, but every word was clear. For the first time that day, Julian looked up. There was something in his eyes, not fear, surprise. He was surprised that I had a recording, surprised that I had kept it. What he didn't know was that I hadn't recorded it because I distrusted him from day one. I found that recording much later, after I had already started to suspect him. When the hearing ended, I walked out of the building. The rain had stopped, and the sun was finally breaking through the clouds. I stood outside and took a deep breath. The air felt fresh. My phone vibrated. It was a message from the competition committee.
Miss Harper, the Crown of Thorns has been awarded the special jury prize.
The judges believe this work is more than a floral installation. It is a powerful challenge to the industry's integrity. I looked at the message, and tears rolled down my face. Not because I was happy, because I had finally been seen. Reporters were waiting outside.
Miss Harler, how do you feel right now?
My feeling is simple. Next time I enter a competition, I'll use flowers. The sketches can stay where they are. They've already done their job. The reporters laughed. I got into a taxi and gave the driver my friend's address. 2 blocks later, I changed my mind. Take me to Flint Floral. When I arrived, the sign above the door was gone. Through the glass, I could see an empty space. The reception desk was still there, but Julian's photograph had been removed. A pale square remained on the wall where it used to hang. The company was finished. Investors had pulled out, employees had left, suppliers were demanding payment. Julian had lost the brand. He had lost the right to stand on a competition stage. The ethics committee banned him from competing for 2 years and prohibited him from reapplying to the industry for 5. It wasn't prison, but for a man who had spent years calling himself a floral master, it was probably worse. I stood there looking through the glass. I didn't go inside. The door was locked, and honestly, I didn't want to. Not long afterward, I received a letter from Julian. It was handwritten. The handwriting was messy. Violet, I'm bankrupt. The brand is gone. The house is gone. Everything is gone. I want to apologize, but I don't know how. You probably don't want to hear it anyway. I just want to say this, your floral work was always exceptional. I always knew that. I just never deserved to put my name on it. I read the letter once and set it down. I never replied, not because I was cruel, because there was no reason to. When someone exits your life, you don't have to send them another invitation back in. My friend asked, "Does it make you happy that he's bankrupt?" I said, "No. His bankruptcy doesn't solve anything. It only proves he couldn't handle the consequences." My friend asked, "Don't you think he deserves it?" "That's for other people to decide," I said. "What I need is peace of mind, and peace of mind doesn't come from watching him suffer. It comes from seeing myself doing well." I started looking for a place to work, not to become someone else's production assistant again, to open my own studio, under my own name. It was a tiny space on the second floor of an old building. The front window overlooked the street below. The renovation took months. I painted walls myself, installed the lights myself, and planted a rose bush outside the entrance. The roses were white. They bloomed slowly, but they bloomed with determination. Not many people came on opening day. A few former clients, a few people from the industry, a few friends. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no champagne, just a pot of tea I brewed myself. I poured tea for everyone. then stood by the window watching people pass below. An elderly woman walked in and asked,
Are you the florist?
I said, Yes. I'd like to order flowers for my daughter. Today's her birthday. I asked what kind of flowers her daughter liked. She said, after thinking for a moment, pink. She's loved pink ever since she was little. I made a bouquet with pink peonies, pink roses, and pink baby's gross. It wasn't especially sophisticated, but it felt warm. Holding the bouquet, the woman's eyes turned red. When she was little, she said, I used to buy flowers for her all the time. Then she grew up and moved out on her own. I stopped buying them. I just want her to know her mother still thinks about her. She'll know. After she left, I stood at my workbench for a long time. It wasn't an extraordinary design, but it was my studio, my client, my flowers. The feeling was like breathing fresh air after being trapped indoors for years. You don't realize how long you've been holding your breath until you finally step outside. Business was slow in the beginning, but I treated every order seriously. I photographed every bouquet and archived every order. Not for anyone else, for myself. To watch myself start over, one step at a time. After some time, I received an unexpected order. It came from the Dutch chief judge, the elderly woman from the competition. She was in London for a floral design forum and decided to stop by my studio. She stood at the entrance, looked around, and said,
Not bad, small but full of life.
I made her a cup of tea. After one sip, she looked at me and said,
Violet, I'd like to invite you to compete in the next World Floral Masters competition. Not on behalf of a company, under your own name. If you'd like, I'd be happy to be your sponsor.
My hand trembled slightly. A few drops of tea spilled onto the table.
I'd love to.
I said immediately. The words came out before I even had time to think. But the truth was, I had already thought about it for a long time. I'd been waiting for an opportunity like this for years.
Good, then I'll see you there.
After she left, I sat alone in the empty studio and suddenly laughed. For the first time, I had enough time to create a real competition piece. Not an installation built from evidence, something made of flowers, something beautiful, something that would make people forget the evidence altogether. From that point on, I worked harder than I ever had before. Not to prove anything, but to honor the light that had found its way into my life, the light that slipped through the cracks in Amsterdam. I went back to studying the history of floral design and its different schools of thought. I researched contemporary installation art and traveled across Europe, visiting studios and flower farms. I even traveled to Japan to study the philosophy of Sogo Ichibashi. One of my teachers told me,
Ikebana isn't about putting flowers into a space. It's about bringing out what the flower already is.
Standing there with a camellia branch in my hand, I suddenly thought of my sketches. Those sketches were my true self. The version of me that never needed someone else's signature. During that period, I designed 3 complete competition collections, not installations like the Crown of Thorns. Real floral works built from flowers, branches, leaves, and fruit. Each one created its own world. I photographed every piece, wrote detailed design notes, and kept every sketch from the creative process. Not because I was afraid of plagiarism anymore, but because I wanted a record of my growth. The sketches piled up again, but this time they didn't need a UV light to prove ownership. My name was reprinted at the top of every page. Another spring came, and I found myself back in Amsterdam for the World Floral Masters competition. This time, I came alone. No Julian, no Flint Floral, no production assistant. On the application form, there was only one line. Creator, Violet Harper. My collection was called The Fifth Spring. 3 large floral installations exploring growth, fracture, and healing. The first used bent willow branches to represent resilience. The second combined broken pottery shards and flowers to show damage and renewal existing side by side. The third for cascading layers of white flowers dedicated to women who endure in silence. On installation day, I stayed at the venue for hours. Every branch, every flower, every leaf was adjusted more than once. A competitor nearby laughed and asked,
Are you performing surgery or arranging flowers?
Neither. I'm keeping a promise to myself. Late that night, the installation was finally finished. I stepped back and looked at it. The lights weren't even on yet, but I could already see its shape. I suddenly remembered the last time I had stood in this building. Back then, I was standing beside the crown of thorns, waiting for the judges to discover the truth. Back then, my work was evidence, not art. Now it was art. The evidence still existed, but it had become nourishment instead of a weapon. I arrived at my booth early on judging day. I wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to my elbows so I could make adjustments if needed. When the 7 judges approached, I stood quietly beside the installation. They studied it for a long time. The chief judge was still the Dutch woman who had helped me years ago. She recognized me and gave a slight nod before continuing. She stopped in front of the 3rd installation, Healing. It featured insect-damaged rose petals, new shoots, and tiny white flowers emerging from cracks. After a long pause, she asked,
What inspired this theme?
Because it took a long time for something new to grow from my own cracks.
She nodded and wrote something on her score sheet. By afternoon, the judging was over. I returned to my hotel, took a shower, and lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't hopeful. I simply felt at peace. Whatever happened next, the work was mine. The name on it was mine. That was enough. That evening, all competitors were invited to the awards banquet. I wore a dark green dress and sat at my assigned table. Next to me sat a floral artist from Japan. We chatted in imperfect English. I wanted the world to know where my roots are. She told me her work featured bamboo from her home town. Mine too, I replied. The awards ceremony began. Bronze was announced, then silver. Neither was mine. I applauded anyway. I was genuinely happy for the winners. Then came the gold award, the highest honor in the competition. When the presuner read the winner's name, my heart skipped a beat.
The gold award goes to Violet Harper of the United Kingdom for the 5th spring.
I just sat there.
That's you. Go.
I stood up, my legs suddenly unsteady. The walk to the stage wasn't long, but it felt endless. Every step felt like walking across the years behind me. The late nights at the workbench, the stolen sketches, the nights I cried in a corner of the Amsterdam Convention Center. Every one of them was beneath my feet. I accepted the trophy and stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent.
My 5th spring is a spring I've waited a very long time for. In all the springs before this, I bloomed in someone else's shadow.
From today on, my flowers bloom in my own sunlight.
Yeah, thank you.
The applause began. I looked out across a sea of unfamiliar faces. Some were clapping, some were smiling, some were nodding. And then I thought of Julian. He had been banned from the industry and wasn't sitting anywhere in that room. That's when I realized something. I hadn't thought about him in a very long time. It wasn't something I forced. I had simply moved on. After the awards banquet, I ran into the elderly Dutch judge in the hotel lobby. She walked over and shook my hand. Your gold medal wasn't because of your story. It was because the work itself was good enough. If the work wasn't good, no story could save it.
You've grown.
The prize money from the gold medal wasn't huge, but it was enough for me to expand the studio downstairs. I rented a larger space in central London with a street-facing window, a wide work table, and a classroom for students. The name stayed the same, Violet Harper Floral. The sign wasn't big, but it hung above the door. I designed the lettering myself, using my own handwriting, the same handwriting that appeared on the dates in my sketches. On opening day, many people came. Some I knew, some I didn't. Someone asked if I wanted to franchise the studio. I said no. Someone asked if I wanted to work on celebrity weddings. I said maybe.
Julian.
Someone asked if I wanted to forgive Julian. I said it didn't matter. I wasn't avoiding the question. It really didn't matter anymore. Once someone has left your life, you don't need to keep spending yourself on whether or not to forgive them. That night, I stood in front of the floor-to-clearing window of my new studio, watching the streetlights across the road come on one by one. There was a time when I didn't even dare put my name on my own work. Now my name was on a 3-meter-high sign, shining for the whole street to see. After the gold medal, I became known faster than I had expected. Interview requests, speaking invitations, and partnership proposals came in like falling snow. I accepted some and turned down most of them. Not because I was proud, but because I understood too well what being busy can turn into. It makes you feel important while quietly taking away your time to create. The studio grew steadily, and every class filled up. Many people came to learn floral design not because they wanted to open a shop or do weddings, but because they wanted to make themselves happy. One of my students was a middle-aged bank executive who showed up every Thursday night without fail. She said, "I've spent too many years counting money. Now I want to touch flowers." One day in class, I was teaching everyone how to make a table centerpiece. She used white roses and green hydraceas to create a very elegant arrangement. When she finished, she looked at it and suddenly started crying.
I didn't know I could make something this beautiful.
She said. I handed her a tissue. "Then from now on, make more beautiful things." She laughed. That smile was more convincing than any customer satisfaction survey. I began to understand that floral design wasn't just beauty. It was a language. A way to tell others and yourself, I am here. I am still here, making something good. Not long after winning the gold medal, I received an email from the industry's committee. Julian had applied for early reinstatement. His reason was that he had fully reflected on his actions and accepted the punishment. The committee wanted my opinion. I thought about it for a day before replying. I don't object, but I suggest that the committee require him a public call of the fact that he plagiarized work in the past. Not to punish him, but to let people in the industry know that plagiarism has consequences. The committee accepted my suggestion. A month later, Julian released a public apology. It wasn't long, but the wording was careful, and his name was signed at the bottom. In it, he wrote, "I plagiarized the work of Miss Violet Harper, published it, entered competitions with it, and profited from it under my own name. I deeply apologize for this. I take full responsibility for my actions." I read those words several times. Then I closed the page and went back to trimming the roses in my hands. It wasn't indifference. I simply knew the apology wasn't really for me. It was for him. The point of an apology isn't whether it gets accepted. The point is saying it out loud, putting the words I plagiarized in the sunlight for everyone to see. That was the beginning of paying back what he owed. Whether he could ever finish paying it back was his business. That autumn, I received a special order. It came from the elderly Dutch chief judge. She was retiring and wanted a special bouquet for her retirement ceremony. Not something grand, something simple, quiet, and very much like her. I used white high pale purple clemencia and gray-green eucalyptus. The wrapping was simple, without too much decoration. I delivered it to her myself. She took the flowers, smelled them, and said,
I finally understand that the best floral design is the kind where you can't see the technique.
"You taught me that."
No,
she said.
You taught yourself.
She retired. The floral world lost a strict judge, but gained a kind grandmother. Sometimes I would call her, and we would talk about flowers, the weather, and life.
"Violet, you are the most stubborn florist I've ever met."
"What's the difference between stubbornness and persistence?" she said.
"Stubbornness is refusing to listen to others. Persistence is listening to yourself. You are the second one."
I thanked her. It was the best compliment I had ever received. The following year, I was invited to create a booth at the Chelsea Flower Show. It was one of the highest honors in British floral design. Not many people received that invitation, and I was still considered young for it. The theme of my booth was echo, not the literal meaning of the word, but a metaphor for overlooked voices, the people working behind the scenes, whose ideas are taken and whose names are not remembered. I used a large amount of translucent material so light could pass through the flowers, reflect and refracted. When visitors came closer, they could see their own shadows among the flowers. I wanted to tell them, you are that voice too. You are also somewhere between being heard and not being heard. During the show, visitors voted my booth most popular exhibit. It wasn't chosen by professional judges, but by ordinary visitors. They may not have understood the technical side of floral design, but they understood beauty and honesty. A young girl wrote in the Gazon first time, because your booth made me feel that flowers are not just decoration, they can speak. I remembered that sentence. That night, I sat on the grass beside the booth and drank a bottle of beer. A bee flew around in front of me, circling the translucent materials. It couldn't tell real flowers from artificial ones, but it knew where the nectar was. Maybe beauty is like that. Real or fake isn't the point. What matters is where the energy comes from. Another year passed, and I published a book. The title was The Fifth Spring. It wasn't a floral design textbook. It was a memoir. I wrote about the journey from the back room to the front stage. I wrote about the sketch that had been stolen. I wrote about the night I sat crying in the corner of the Amsterdam Convention Center. I wrote about the crown of thorns, the gold medal, and the version of myself that started over. Halfway through the book, I got stuck, not because I didn't know what to write, because I was afraid to write it. I worried that people would think I was looking for sympathy, that I was turning my pain into publicity. A friend of mine said, "You're not asking for sympathy. You're showing people that pain can be transformed into work. That's what art is." So I finished the book. After reading the manuscript, my editor said something I'll never forget. There's not a single line in this book telling people they should forgive, and not a single line telling them they shouldn't. You simply told a story and left the choice to the reader. That's because I have no right to tell other people what to do. I can only tell them what I did. I said, the response to the book was better than I expected. Many readers wrote to me about experiences that sounded painfully familiar. Ideas stolen, credit taken by someone else, doing most of the work while receiving the least recognition. They asked me what they should do. I didn't have a perfect answer, but I always included one sentence in my replies. Keep your sketches. One day, they'll become your weapon. Some years later, I returned to Amsterdam. Not to compete, to judge. That year, the World Floral Masters competition invited me to join the judging panel. I was the youngest judge of the 7, and the only one who had once won a gold medal as a competitor. Judging was exhausting. There were countless entries, and every piece required careful scoring, discussion, and written feedback. But we all took it seriously, because every competitor reminded me of the person I used to be. Nervous, hopeful, carrying their entire heart inside one booth. After judging ended, I made a point of revisiting one particular installation. The designer was a woman from Poland, barely in her 20s. She had used wildflowers and dried grasses from her hometown. The work was simple, but it felt honest. I gave it a high score. She eventually won the bronze medal. During the ceremony, she cried. When she came off the stage, she walked straight over to me.
Thank you, Miss Harper,
she said. You're welcome. Your work deserved it. I thought back to years earlier. No one had given me a high score in this building, but I had given myself a chance. Now I was giving someone else a chance. It wasn't compensation, it was a legacy, passing along the chance to be seen. Time passed, and I was almost 40. My studio in a European capital had become a small landmark in the city's floral scene, not because it was big, but because it didn't look like a typical flower shop. Flowers in my window. There were sketches. Those sketches were framed and hung against the street-facing glass. People passing by would stop to look. Some took photos with their phones. Some walked in and asked,
Are these your sketches? They're beautiful.
Yes, I would say. I had taught many rounds of classes. Some of my students had opened their own studios. Some had become freelance florists. Some simply arranged flowers and plants at home and were happy doing it. Every now and then, one of them would message me, Violet, I made a bouquet for you today, along with a photo. I would look at it and send back a beautiful emoji. I rarely attended industry events anymore. Not because I was tired of them, but because I had realized something. The best floral design isn't on competition stages. It isn't in the media. It isn't anywhere people can judge it. It lives in ordinary days. In a bouquet a mother gives her daughter. In a single rose someone buys for themselves when they walk into a flower shop. Those flowers don't need to be signed. They don't need to be remembered. They simply exist. One day, I received a special order. A man walked into my studio and said he wanted to order flowers for his wife. He told me she was the gentlest person he had ever known, but she had been ill recently, and chemotherapy had taken all her hair. He wanted her to know she was still beautiful. I used pink roses, white baby's grass, and pale purple lavender. It wasn't a complicated arrangement. It was warm and soft, the kind of bouquet that made you want to hold it close.
She'll love it. She used to love flowers.
When he took it from me, he cried. "She still will," I said. After he left, I sat at my workbench for a long time. Then a message came through on my phone. It was from Julian.
I won't use anyone else's work again. This time, I'll design it myself.
But I didn't delete it either. I kept it, not out of resentment, but as a reminder. A person can lose everything and still choose to start again. He started from zero. I started from less than zero, but we both started. Another spring arrived. The cherry blossoms were blooming in London, and the magnolias along the streets had opened too. I changed the sketches in my window, replacing them with new designs from recent years. Every sketch had a date, a signature, and a fingerprint. But this time the fingerprint wasn't there to prove ownership. It was there to record one thing. I am here. A young reporter came to interview me.
Miss Harler, do you think you're successful?
Success isn't a state, I said. It's a process. I'm still in that process. I haven't reached the end yet. Maybe I never will. And maybe that's fine. At least it means I haven't stopped.
Is there anything you'd like to say to your younger self?
I thought about it. Leave sooner. Don't wait so long. But if you do wait, I smiled, then turn those waiting years into part of your work, like I did. After the interview, I walked her to the door. She took a few steps, then turned back.
Miss Harper, is that bouquet in your window for sale?
No, that one's mine, but I can make one for you.
Okay.